Is it the typical thing? All right. Welcome back to the show, guys. Welcome back to the Iron House podcast. This is Daryl.
And this is Roy.
And today we have a very, very special guest joining us, Patrick himself.
Thank you so much for having me.
The one true Patrick, as Instagram would tell you. Welcome back, dude. It's been a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, has been 6 months?
6 months. For everyone not familiar with Patrick, Patrick used to be a beloved member of this team. Well, I guess you still are. Once part of the team, always part of the team. But for the new members who don't know, you recently moved to Sweden. And but you also kind of, back then, you finished graduating and everything, and you went to start your career, and that's an obvious moment to stop, your part-time job. Well, we miss you, though. So we're happy to have you back. And we're excited to hear how things have been going, how things have been developing for you. I want to start off with, how the hell is Sweden?
Oof. Lots to unpack. Sweden is dope.
Yeah?
So much nature, so much serenity. Lots to take in. Definitely really, really nice environment. Also culturally, a little bit different than the Netherlands. Lots to get used to, but I'm digging it so far.
Yeah, because when you moved, you were really, really excited about it. It was also kind of in your bucket list, right? You always wanted to move to Sweden.
Yeah.
And what was it about Sweden that attracted you so much?
I think a lot of factors. One is it's not so packed.
Oh, okay.
Just way less people on a huge plot of land. Than just the culture of people being more laid back, more slow.
All right.
And lots of benefits, of course, when it comes to schooling, when it comes to social stuff, like social services, all that. So that was something that attracted me. And then, of course, the environment that is ever vibrant.
Yeah. Sounds like it's a good personality match for you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm more like a introvert, stoic guy.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, being on a podcast, which sounds weird, but
contradictions are part of life, so it's all good.
Exactly.
Awesome. And you moved there, and that's when you kind of kicked your work into overdrive as well. Mm-hmm. So let's tell the people a little bit about what you do, and Roy, feel free to jump in when you have specific questions also, because you are a performance coach, basically. You're a performance psychologist, and that's what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
So walk us through how that got started.
So let's start maybe with studying.
Yeah.
I studied psychology, bachelor's at the University of Groningen. Went on to do a master's degree in talent development and creativity, which is pretty much also psychology related. And I became certified as a sports psychologist, as a performance coach, and all those papers that you need for this. And then I started coaching people, athletes. And really quickly I learned that I have a natural inclination for that. I was always somebody who was really great at reading other people, making them comfortable around me. So all the skills that I learned and all the knowledge that I picked up during my studies, that is what kind of underlined that natural propensity for helping people. So now I'm coaching athletes, mainly powerlifters at this point. And some of them more successful, some of them less successful, but regardless, just an amazing field of work to be doing, because you help people so tremendously doing something that they love and not do because of the money, because there's no money in powerlifting, at least not in the Netherlands. So they do it for fun.
But hardly anywhere.
Truth.
You have to be a very specific type of talent to make money with powerlifting.
Oh, for sure.
Even if you're top of the food chain, there's still world champions who are personal trainers, because that's how they got to pay their bills.
Yeah, exactly. So I think everybody comes to me with passion.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to give back. I want to be passionate about helping those people overcome, troubles with anxiety before competition, maybe having trouble to balance their everyday life with being an athlete, being an entrepreneur, whatever it is, and be part of their growth within that community and be part of the growth of the community as a whole, which I think is something that everybody in this room is basically part of.
Absolutely. And that's what you've been doing for the past 6 months, I think, or maybe a little bit more even?
I've started a year ago, but the first 6 months I did it sort of part-time, because I had a full-time job. So I had to also do something on the side to build it up. But now full-time I'm doing it 6 months, yeah.
And how many athletes have you worked with, give or take, like rough ballpark?
60, 70, something like that.
In total?
Yeah, I would kind of split it up into athletes that I've worked with one-on-one, and then people that I've worked with, for instance, coaches, to educate them and help them become better coaches. I kind of lump them in together. So
in a group setting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So that should be around 60, I think.
All right. So talk to us about what the main focus is for someone who might be interested in, let's say, your services, or what's the most common problem that someone can help solve in that sense? Because when you're talking about performance psychology, it's half performance is succeeding in a specific sport or specific skill, and the other half is psychology. But what could help someone maybe better understand what exactly it is you do for your clients?
Yeah. One thing that is very, very common that I see with people that come to me or people that just like write me messages is that oftentimes people are so much in their own heads. They spend so much time in here thinking about, how's the workout going to go? Am I going to injure myself? Am I going to hit my RPE 8 single and it's going to be the proper way? They think about so many things. So we call it intrusive thoughts. So every thought that comes in your mind without your conscious control, that's what an intrusive thought is. That is something people struggle with immensely. And that, of course, takes away from the fun that you have. You don't look so much forward to actually working out or competing. It also takes away from your performance. So what I usually tell people to do is to manage that, is to find a way to find resolution, because our brain loves closure. So it's kind of like an earworm, where like a song stuck in your head and it just keeps looping and looping and looping because your brain knows there's no closure. We have to find closure. And it's the same with intrusive thoughts. So what I usually tell people is that's something we have to address, because thoughts create emotions, emotions create behavior or motivate behavior that leads to a certain outcome. So I usually give people writing tasks where they can fill in forms with questions. For instance, do I have proof for my thought? Do I have proof against it? What is the worst thing that can happen? What is a more rational belief that I can have? And then go from there to restructure the way people think. That is a big one. And tying into that, of course, is arousal regulation. How well someone able to control their physiological arousal, how hyped up they are for something. And people overdo it all the time, where they get hyped up to the max, but it's not serving them anything because
Not effective.
Yeah, exactly. Because you see somebody who's already really, really introverted and very anxious, just as is. And then somebody just also pushes them to hype themselves up and go out there and do their job. But this is not working. So like a one-size-fits-all strategy doesn't work. That's why my one-on-one coachings are always so specialized to the one person, because you cannot just give one exercise to someone and say that works for everyone. So I think
same as in powerlifting.
Yeah, pretty much.
You also took one of his courses, right?
Yeah, I enrolled in the course of Patrick.
What attracted you to it? Like, what were you trying to get out of it?
Well, because sometimes, I recognize a lot of the things that Patrick talks about. How people struggle with controlling their emotions, thoughts, where they start overthinking their training to the point where they can't really put in effort. They start overthinking their technique and the weights and all that instead of just like putting in effort. And I wanted to help people with that. So then, because Patrick was still working here. Oh no, you weren't working anymore, but you were just training here, and I saw you a lot. And you were talking about doing seminars, doing maybe a course, and I got excited immediately because I found it super interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty important topic, because one of the things that always was pretty obvious to me, maybe just because I'm naturally inclined to, is that anything involving success and performance is something that you care enough about to try and go for. But if we would like take a random note now, like how, for you, powerlifter, how much of powerlifting would you say is like the mental game? So how much percent? Just roughly, like what your instinct tell you?
Like probably like 30-40%.
What would you say, like in any like competitive sport, how much of that would you say is like mental?
I would say if you really go into like the tippy top, the 1% performers, it can make a huge difference.
So let's bring it back more to the enthusiast, more to the hobbyist.
I think Roy is pretty much on point, like 30-40. I would not say more than the physical side, but I think it's a huge component. But it makes such a difference to get that 30% as well, because
I think the more driven you are, the more important it gets. Because the more driven you are, the harder you're going to be on yourself. And it's usually the people that are really hard on themselves that have a lot of issue with these things. Because if training isn't that serious, then it's not an important to you. So if then a session doesn't go well, it's not that important. But if you're super driven, you want to get a certain total, get a certain placing, then you're super hard on yourself. Then if a single training session doesn't go well, you get all these, like Patrick mentioned, you can get negative emotions, intrusive thoughts, and then one training session turning bad can turn into a bad training week, can turn into a bad training block if you don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, because that's my whole point. Let's say if the number is that 30% of the performance they're trying to put down is mental, it's, to me, it was always pretty funny to realize that how little time people actually invest in the mental time. If the mental game is 30% and you're not spending 30% of your time, practicing that or getting better at the mental game, then you're clearly leaving, performance on the table.
Oh, for sure.
So they do all their programming, they train all their days, they eat and sleep and everything. So the physical part is being taken care of. But if we can conclude that it's at least 30% mental game, then maybe people should, be aware of the fact that you probably should be working on that as well. It's also an important skill to have as an athlete.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, around 30%, what are the, in your experience as a coach, what are the few most common problems that you deal with? You talked about intrusive thoughts already.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that maybe even beginning lifters come across? And what are some of the things people can do to solve that?
What I see commonly with more beginner lifters is that in the beginning they make a lot of progress, so they have constant feedback and constant motivation, reward, everything in there. So for them it's like everything is fun, and that honeymoon period at one point that comes to a stop, and you're still a beginner if that comes to a stop, and then it becomes harder to motivate yourself. And I think that's because a lot of people go into lifting with the mindset of, I want to achieve an outcome. There has to be an outcome at the end of the tunnel, which I see not as a bad thing necessarily, but a lot of people don't focus enough on the process of certain things. So we have difference between outcome goals and process goals. Process goals are more focused on following a certain process, being engaged into taking certain steps, which keeps you more focused and makes you more intrinsically motivated. So it keeps you motivated regardless of the circumstances. You don't have to have an outcome for you to keep going. So I think that's one thing that is massive, that people also don't understand. How can I make behavioral changes in my life so that they line up with the person that I want to become? So people are, first of all, unaware of, why am I doing this in the first place? Is it because I want to get jacked? Is it because I want to lose weight? But what is the desire beyond that? Because somebody doesn't just want to lose weight. It's because they want to be able to pick up their child from school and not be out of breath when they pick them up.
Feel better about themselves in the mirror.
Exactly. Or somebody got rejected when they were younger because they were overweight, and then all of a sudden they say, well, I don't want to experience that anymore. So there's a lot of emotion, a lot of thoughts, a lot of other motives behind what we do that most people are not aware of. And if we get to what is beyond the thing that you say that you want, there's a lot more growth potential there. And that is something that we can do with exploring identity, exploring goal setting. How do we set goals? And what do we want to achieve at the end? So I think that's something that a lot of beginner lifters could do better. And I think also what a lot of coaches could do better to guide those lifters through the process.
I've always loved the saying that people say, when you love the process and you get the goal, you win twice. You win first by having a process that you get to enjoy, because most people don't. Most people have to suffer through a process, and then they have to suffer through maybe not achieving their goals. So if you focus on the process first and you find a way to enjoy it, and you enjoy it in spite of what happens in the results, and you get the results at the end, then you win twice.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's not so much fluctuation. You're not so much dependent on what is the outcome that's happening. So if you walk into the gym and you don't get your prescribed weight of that day, if you only focus on that, your mood immediately goes down. Yeah. So your emotional reactivity is through the roof. You just kind of flip-flop back and forth all the time. So you're dependent on this one thing to work. But if you have a lot of other things that you can focus on that are more process-oriented, all of a sudden you have the ability to get a reward more constantly. meaning that if I focus on, I don't know, my recovery, focusing on getting enough steps and technique, those sorts of things. If I focus on those, I can do that every single day, and I can get, some sort of reward from that, so that I feel competent because I have done something the way I wanted it to do, rather than I had to get this weight. Because you have no control over the weight on that day, but you have control over your own effort following certain processes.
And you also have control over your reaction on it. How much do you think of that is the problem with today's society of instant gratification? I mean, you talked about the honeymoon period. Mm-hmm. Everyone's getting gains now, and they're getting happy, and then they notice that the gains are being delayed. That now I need to train 3 months before I actually see some progress. Like that sounds to me like the problem with instant gratification. If I don't have it now, I don't think it's worth it. And in any sports, you need time to develop the skills and talents, and the better you get, the harder it is to get better. You think there's a correlation there between people having an issue with instant gratification and how they perceive their performance?
For sure. I think it also has to do, most of us grew up with social media. That's the ultimate instant gratification all the time. You scroll through and you get an emotional hit out of it. You get some dopamine out of it. It makes you feel good. So it's the same when we condition our brain that that's what we want, instant gratification, then of course that's what is drawing itself through your whole life. So yes, a lot of people are falling prey to that. I want always everything to go the way I want it to, and I want to have it constantly every single day. And that's just not the reality for most people. So delaying that gratification and training your mind actually to be able to deal with that is super, super vital for also staying in the game for a long time at the end of the day. Because it doesn't matter if you look really great in the mirror or you're really, really strong for a year, and then the rest of your life you don't do anything about it anymore. You want to be consistent over a long time. So the instant gratification doesn't really lend itself to that. So it's more like a longer game, and we have to condition ourselves on how to do that, basically.
And you're talking about training your mind and training your psychology. What are some exercises people can do? Maybe the 3 simplest things people can implement to start already training their minds to perform better, anticipating that at some point the real world's going to kick back and you're not going to make the gains you want. You're going to get nervous. You might have a blackout moment when you're about to PR. So maybe what are some exercises people can do to actually train their psychology in that sense?
Yeah. I think the first thing is when we talked about intrusive thoughts, how to manage those. That's a huge one. I think everybody should be able to do that in some shape or form.
Are you talking about positive self-talk, or are you talking about your ideal self?
No, it's more intrusive thoughts are more like the negative thoughts that pop in your head. Let's say you go for a deadlift and the first thing that pops in your mind is, hopefully I don't hurt myself.
Yeah, but I mean in the way to combat that.
Oh, yeah. I think the way I like to combat that is to, one, write it all out. Just sit down for 10 minutes, write it all out, write all the thoughts, all the worries, all the concerns out. Take that time to really sit down with it and write it out. And at the end, cross out all the things that you cannot control, and all the things that are not crossed out, those are the ones that you can control. Because that's most of the time the problem with intrusive thoughts, because we feel like, oh my God, I don't have control over if I'm going to hurt myself, if I'm going to do well. So as soon as you write it out, you give your brain a little bit more closure, a little bit more space to actually do the thing that you want to do, because we need a lot of cognitive resources to
filter out all the bullshit, basically.
Exactly. And I think positive self-talk can play into that. That is definitely a second step that I love doing with athletes, is not only writing out all the negative things, all the things that they're concerned about, everything that they're worried about, but also what can we replace it with? And that could be some positive self-talk. That could be instructional self-talk, so guiding yourself through the process of what you're going to do. Or it could be motivational self-talk. And that motivational self-talk sounds different for every single person. For some of them, that is very compassionate and calm and kind. For others, it's very aggressive and out there. I think a lot of people are more comfortable with the second one. A lot of people are very aggressive.
What do you have?
I don't do any of this shit for myself. No. But that's why I found the course super interesting, because I don't know, I think I sort of learned how to deal with this stuff like by chance or by experience, or maybe I don't really struggle with most of these things. So for me, it sort of like comes naturally, I could say. but that makes it harder for me to help some of my athletes.
Yeah, I have the same
Because-
problem.
Yeah, because if I don't know how to deal with it myself because I haven't experienced it, then how am I supposed to like help somebody else with it?
Yeah,
And
I've always had the issue of someone say, "Yeah, I just get so nervous about this." I'm like, "Well, I never get fucking nervous. Like I can't really recall getting nervous about anything. I think everyone gets nervous, but
Yeah.
for me, it's such a it's such a small issue in my life that we're like, well, just don't fucking be nervous, and you have to learn that everyone's different, and just because the coach feels a certain way doesn't mean that the athlete's going to be able to apply themselves to that as well.
Yeah, and I've had that a lot where I'm like nervous for a certain lift or something, but I've just sort of learned how to deal with it. But yeah, that's not something I can.
But in that moment, like when you're nervous for something, what does the voice in your head say? Does it say, "You got this, Roy. You're the man," or does it say, "Man the fuck up"?
Well, so now it doesn't affect me negatively at all. Like now, if I go for a heavy squat, I get nervous, but that actually helps me squat heavy because I know how to calm myself down. Put on my anime songs. That helps, and then I can just hit my squat usually better than all my warm-ups before. But before, I've had some like squat PRs that just felt so bad and so heavy because I was too nervous. I was too anxious. Like
Or too hyped?
yeah, I was. Well, not necessarily like too hyped because it wasn't like I wasn't really feeling hyped, just like anxious, like
Okay.
you don't want to do this.
Yeah, but
And I've sort of learned how to deal with it, but just do it. You can't tell your athletes that. Just go do it, man.
yeah, the thing that you mentioned was like you have the ability to also reinterpret what does this mean that I'm anxious right now? Does it mean that I'm excited? Is it something that's good, that's a threat, that is helpful? So that's also something that in that moment when you said, "Oh, I got nervous, but it was good for my performance," is because you were able to interpret it the correct way.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, this will probably help me."
Maybe you were more excited than you think, and it wasn't as nervous as you felt.
Yeah, for real. I mean, if you think about it, what is the true difference between being excited and being nervous?
Your perception.
It's only interpretation,
Yeah.
because everything else is the same. You have heightened heart rate, you have sweaty hands, you trembling. Everything is the same.
Adrenaline is pumping.
Exactly. So the only way you can change it is by how you interpret it, and that's also what science has shown, that there's a difference between interpreting nerves as a threat or a resource that you can use, and the athletes that are really, really great at keeping their arousal in check are the ones who are able to interpret it as a resource rather than something that stands in their way. I think something that you guys brought up is because you haven't experienced it. You say you don't get nervous for like the big things. Do you ever get nervous when you don't do anything? When you just sit down and you feel like, oh, I should be working, I should be doing something great?
I think if I've had that, it more closely relates to what I would label as anxious. Because I see nervousness as closely linked to a feeling of other people's perception of me. So most when people get nervous is because they're nervous for something involving other people.
Yeah.
Like when it's internal, it's usually more anxiety. It's a friction of what I expect from myself and what I'm actually doing or what I anticipate to come. So I'm sure like if I'm on vacation after 10 days, I get anxious because like I want to go work,
Yeah.
So that to me is pretty natural. Me and Fleur both after like 10 days on Curacao, we were like, let's not talk about work. A few more days, then we're back home, just relax and fucking chill. So yeah, that anxiety in that sense, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a huge personality component when it comes to arousal and arousal regulation, because I would say you're more like an extrovert, like very commonly extrovert.
They're all
Absolutely.
extrovert. Never noticed this.
Yeah.
I know, and very.
It's really hard to be a business owner and be an introvert. Let me just put it out there. So I'm happy that I'm naturally loud and obnoxious.
Yeah, true. And people that are extroverted, extremely extroverted, they are usually under aroused, which means that they need a lot of stimulation to feel like, oh, I'm in a good zone. So for you, it's maybe more natural to go like, oh, I want to feel a little bit nervous because that makes me feel comfortable. So it's about what is comfortable for you. Whereas someone who's really, really, really introverted, they're constantly over aroused. So for them, it's comfortable to be by themselves, be relaxed, do nothing, because that gives them peace of mind. So there's also such a genetical personality component to it. And that's something that I think is super important to also point out to people that listen to this. You should figure out what is your personality, where do you fall, introversion, extroversion, maybe even take a test. Where do you fall in neuroticism, conscientiousness, all those factors. And what does that mean to you? What can you find out from that? The awareness, the self-awareness is the first step to actually getting to know yourself and what you specifically need. Because whatever I can do on a podcast like this is I can give general advice, but you still have to kind of apply that to yourself, to your
specific use case.
Exactly. I think there's some things that work almost across the board for everybody, but there is quite a bit of nuance when it comes to the individual person, their personality.
Yeah, because one of the things that we were talking about before that I feel a lot of people kind of go a little bit too wild with is hyping themselves up. Yeah. You see in a lot of competitions a lot that people who naturally aren't extrovert or loud or really present in that moment, they let themselves fall into the trap of, well, it's my last deadlift, everyone's screaming my name, I guess I gotta go, and then completely fuck up their last lift.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a social pressure to get hyped and to yell, and sometimes you have people doing a really, really awkward, like they've never slapped their own thighs before, and they try for the first time competition because they feel like it's necessary, like if I want to make this lift, I gotta go all out. And then they choose the wrong road. Instead of down-regulating and being, okay, let me just focus on me, let me let go of everything I can't control. You're like, oh, people yelling at me, it's my last lift, I don't want to look bad, I want a good post for social media, I want to go 9 for 9, and then everything, and then, oh, well, super awkward thigh slap and super awkward yell, and they head out to the platform, and then they just fuck it up because that's not their natural state.
Yeah.
Does that sound to you like it kind of links towards operating within your personality boundaries as well when it comes to that?
For sure. I can really see, based on the personality of a person, what they probably will respond to the best. Most of my clients, admittedly, are really introverted, so most of them need ways of regulating their arousal down. But yeah, of course, there are also ways to regulate arousal up. But I think the methods of hyping ourselves up come a lot more natural to us, whereas regulating our arousal down is something that most people never think about. Like I have clients where I say, how much do you pay attention to your breathing when you lift? Right before you step under the bar, how's your breathing? They're like, I don't know. Like that's the first thing that you should look at when you think about your arousal, because that dictates where the rest of your body and your brain will follow. So a lot of times I give people breathing exercises, and it's like a super quick, easy fix where I say, just regulate your breathing in a certain way, and all of a sudden they go like, wow,
yeah,
I could focus so much better, I was not nervous and all that. So, and I think what you also pointing out, the social pressure of it is a huge one. And of course, looking at your favorite lifters, a lot of people look at their favorite lifters and they're like high energy, they're always hyping themselves up, they want to emulate that because they see this guy is doing well with that, so that's the way.
But it's also that usually those kind of lifters also get the biggest following, you know? Just being like John Hack, just stepping on the platform, doing a deadlift isn't really all that marketable. Unless you're like he is and just the absolute best. But for most people that aren't like the absolute best, like hyping yourself up, being all aggressive, looks better on social media than going to the platform.
But the funny thing is, even throughout history, I mean, the concept of whether you call it box breathing or peace breathing or self-breathing, whatever you call it, that shit has been used for centuries in every high pressure situation. Like, I love history, so I love reading about it, but you have the trained snipers, for example. One of the things that snipers first have to learn to do is to breathe while being shot. If you start rapidly breathing, it makes your whole body jitter, it throws you completely off base. So the idea of finding your optimal performance arousal through breathing has been around for centuries.
Yeah.
But a lot of people now just don't pay attention to it. It's such an easy thing that everyone can do. It's free. You got to buy anything. You got to pay anyone for it. It's so easy. So what's an example of a good breathing technique for people? Let's say someone who gets nervous easily, and we can all imagine that getting ready for a really big lift is a good way to get nervous for a lot of people. So what's some of your favorite breathing techniques someone can apply?
Yeah, I really love box breathing.
Yeah.
That's really the bread and butter of arousal regulation from my side.
The creme of the creme.
So the typical box breathing would be just 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 second out, 4 second hold, and keep on repeating that. Try to breathe into your diaphragm, so you don't have like chest breathing the entire time. And while you repeat that, one thing that I like people to do is kind of visualizing in their body, where do they feel the nerves and the anxiety, and where does it locate? For some people, it's all up here in the head. For some people, it centers around the chest or all
Shaky
out the
legs.
body. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's such a
People
common
have-
one as well.
You see them getting ready and the knees start jiggering.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what I say to them is try to visualize all the anxiety that is in your body while you're doing the breathing exercise. Visualize it and bring it all into one place, and bring it right where the sternum or the diaphragm is, and try to visualize that is extra energy. Once again, reframing, what does anxiety mean? Anxiety doesn't mean it stands in your way. We're regulating it down right now so that you can use it as an extra resource to then go out there and actually do something good with it. So that is one of my favorites when it comes to down-regulating arousal. So yeah, I think breathing, like you said, it's such an old practice, but we overlook that because it doesn't sound scientific.
It's underrated,
But honestly, we can make it scientific if we want to. But
most probably.
Sometimes the easy fix is what
The
helps.
simplest ones.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I give one of my clients like a super, super, super basic, simple exercise, and they text me 5 minutes later and say, "Oh my God, that's magic!
Yeah.
How did you do that?"
Yeah.
It's no magic.
And it's funny how most people will reject something because it's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have that a lot with martial artists that they have to learn to relax and breathe while they're being choked out. Because the best way to not pass out by being choked is to learn to regulate your breath. But then people will dismiss it because, it can't be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Like I paid 500 euros for this. Like, all you're gonna give me is breathing exercises, but it's fundamental in basically everything we do. Same reason why you can't have a good brace without a good breath. How you regulate your breathing can be indeed super, super vital to your performance.
Yeah. And I think everything that's performance related, I think most of the time is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. But you need someone who keeps you accountable and really explains you the mechanisms behind it, because that's what the magic is basically.
Yeah.
As a psychologist, I give you an exercise, but I also explain why it works, how it works, why we implement it, how we implement it. We cover all that. And that is where the magic happens in that conversation. I think the harder work, and that's something that a lot of people do neglect because it's then too difficult, too hard, is the self-esteem, self-image sort of thing. I have quite a bit of clients recently where I've been working on self-image, self-esteem a lot. But a lot of people don't want to do that work because they have been doing things a certain way for such a long time, and they say it works. If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But obviously something is broken. So that is where really the hard work comes in, and that is where people really have to learn how to reflect on themselves and see, how does my self-esteem, my self-image issue, how does that sort of mess things up for me across the board? Performance, relationships, career, everywhere, because there are always patterns that come back everywhere. And that is something that a lot of people feel uncomfortable with, but that's the real hard work.
I think also people
doing.
feel uncomfortable because it might make them reflect on a part of themselves that they've been disliking longer than they care to admit. So having to reflect on yourself and think about your self-esteem, you're like, well, I put on this facade, but technically I fucking dislike the way I look more than I let on.
Yeah.
And it's for them, it could be opening a can of worms.
Yeah, for sure. Also, but there's so much, it comes with so much vulnerability, opening yourself up and actually being honest. And I think that's where the real beauty of the work lies. Like, I love helping people with performance. That's amazing. I like when somebody can perform better on a platform, in the gym, wherever it is. But the real beauty lies in if someone is able to open themselves up, make themselves vulnerable, and put everything out there without any judgment. I can meet them without any judgment. And we can together figure out, hey, where does this thought come from that you think you're not good enough, that you don't look good enough, that you can never do things the proper way? Where does it come from? And what can we do to actually change your perspective? And that is super, super difficult. But when I see someone opening up and having this vulnerability, that's when I really go like, okay, this is exciting. I love this.
This is why I'm doing this.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if I can make someone a better athlete, cool. If I can make someone a better person across the board, that's, sorry for swearing, that's fucking amazing.
And it's, hey man, I fucking swear all the fucking time, dude.
Okay, no rules, no rules. But that's the most beautiful part of the work, because I had people who came to me and they expected me to only make them a better athlete. And afterwards they said, my business improved.
Yeah.
My relationships improved.
Because you're never just one thing. You're never just an athlete. You're never just a business owner. You're a complete person with different facets, different components, and the one feeds the other. I tell this to business owners too. Like, you can't just be an entrepreneur. You have to also be an enjoyable, pleasant partner. You have to be an enjoyable, pleasant parent. You have to be an enjoyable, pleasant family member. If you're focused only in that one aspect, the rest is going to suffer. It's going to die.
Yeah. Also, looking at those patterns, you have that a lot. Somebody who seeks control within the gym. For instance, I always take the same squat rack. I use the same plates. I do it the same way. That control, that neuroticism that the person has.
And how fast that shit falls apart when they can't get the barbell they want, man.
Yep. But that's the same that they have when they are at home with their partner and they want to put the clothes away in a certain way. They want to fold the laundry in a certain way. They want to do everything in a certain way to cling onto control.
It's a false sense of control.
Yeah, for sure. And it's reinforced because they have been doing it for so long in every aspect of their life that they don't know what to do if they don't have that control, because then their emotions spiral out. So if we can fix that, not only in the gym, but everywhere, that will help a lot, because it transfers over. It's a skill that transfers over from the gym to your private life and the other way around. So once again, if someone practices their lifts in the gym, it's only so much time that you can spend in the gym. It's maybe like 8 hours, 10 hours, even if you go really crazy, maybe like 15. But you have so many hours in the day that you don't fill. What are you doing with the rest of your time? There's so much more practice to be done. And that can be identifying patterns, undoing those patterns, restructuring the way you think, learning how to control your emotions better or regulate your emotions better, using imagery to practicing certain things, exposing yourself to things that you're afraid of. There's so much stuff to do. That is not just picking up heavy weights.
One of the things I like to think about and learn about is the difference between self-esteem and self-efficacy. That I think there's also something that people struggle with more. It's weird because it seems like nowadays everyone's struggling with some form of either self-esteem or like the negative self-image. And you have the difference between self-esteem, how I feel about myself, and your self-efficacy, which is simply regardless of what I feel about myself, what are things that I can actually do? What am I actually good at? What am I actually capable of? And people tend to disconnect the two. Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing from you is that when it comes to performance psychology, it's a lot about bridging that gap in between letting go of your perception of yourself and more focusing on what's actually there. Mm-hmm. Like if you've been practicing powerlifting for 3 years, you probably know how to squat. You probably shouldn't have to worry so much about your squat. So that's a self-efficacy part. And for you, how are you seeing this develop as a coach? Like where do you want us to go to? Because right now you work mostly powerlifters, right? Mm-hmm. Is that going to be stated goal? Do you want to branch out in different things? What does the end game look like for you?
I definitely want to branch out. I think powerlifters, it's quite a unique sport in that it's quite small. And I kind of like that. And it's also not as complex because you're just standing in space and doing a movement. So there are a lot of challenges that come with that. So I love that side. But I would definitely love to just work with different kinds of athletes, because I believe that all the fundamental principles that I've also laid out here can be applied in every single sport, basically. We just have to find an application for it that's different for the specific demands. So I would definitely love to work more with strongmen, weightlifters, CrossFitters, but also just branch out completely and maybe work with some martial artists, because I believe they can probably benefit a lot as well. Or maybe even with some people who retired from a sport. Gymnasts are a big population, because lots of gymnasts, when they're done with their sport, when they retire, which is mostly in their 20s, they retire really, really early.
Gotta save those ankles, man.
Yeah, and they have been going through the ringer. Like some of them, their body is broken beyond repair. Most of them had their self-esteem broken down by their coaches, because coaches in gymnastics can be specifically brutal.
Yeah, are they notorious for being dickheads?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot about if you gain the slightest amount of weight, you're fat. you should be doing better. Or just simple things like if you don't get a 10 out of 10, they immediately go like, well,
You're
cool,
off the
did you get the
team.
9 out of 10? Yeah,
Yeah.
you get the 9 out of 10, cool. But where's the last point?
Yeah.
So it's never enough. So a lot of those athletes that retire, specifically in gymnastics, but also in other sports, they have been fed these stories about them that they're failure constantly, because that's what motivated them to satisfy that coach. Hey, I have to make the coach happy. But then as soon as you retire, the coach is not there anymore. You don't have any motivation to make anyone happy, and you're unhappy about yourself because you think you're failure constantly. So I would also love to work with retired athletes, for instance. So I think that's the broad vision, trying to help as many people as possible in different sports.
I think that last one is super important, because what you notice a lot with retired athletes or people who were forced to retire is they tie their whole identity and their own personal value to that sport. So their whole lives they were, when you ask them, what are you? Like, I am a football player. I am a boxer. And then once it's taken away, the whole identity falls apart. There's a crisis of personality and identity that people, they can't reconcile anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
If I can't box, then I can't be who I am.
Yep.
Instead of being learned that, no, you're still who you are. You just happen to have boxed and now you don't box anymore.
But you see that commonly if you walk up to a random person and say, hey, who are you? They would say, like, you would say to me, I'm Daryl and I'm a business owner.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
no,
my favorite exercise to do with people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's not what you do. It's not what you are. It's what you do. Like, you're a business owner. That's what you do. But some people definitely get themselves wrapped up so much into that.
You guys know what the right answer is to that question? Because it's a philosophical trick question. Like when you're asked, like, what are you? There's one like correct type of answer.
Human.
So that's like the wise ass answer. Like, so when you ask people like, what are you? They usually respond with their vocation. I am a teacher. I am a lawyer. I'm a doctor, etc. And then you have people who value their passion more. So, I'm a power lifter. I'm a CrossFitter. I'm a runner, etc., etc. So there's like, those are the layers that most people answer. But again, if you're a runner and you get hit by a car and you can't run anymore, then what's left?
Yeah.
If you're a power lifter and then like, you can't compete anymore, what's left? So like the trick answer, the right answer is, and most people have a trouble getting to, is the answer to, what are you? I'm enough for the people who matter to me. Because then nothing else matters. Because whether you're a powerlifter, a CrossFitter, for people who matter to you, your parents, your loved ones, your friends, your kids, you're enough. Because whether I CrossFit or weightlift, my wife will still love me the same.
Yeah.
And that's like the important thing you have to get to. And most people, they're so excited about it. I'm a proud teacher. Like, cool. But what if you can't teach anymore?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's insane sometimes when you sit down with someone and you ask them, okay, let's pinpoint the roles that you're taking on throughout the day. So you're a business owner, you're an athlete, you're a teacher, whatever. And then ask them, what are characteristics that you have that you value about yourself? The first thing people say is, they never thought about it.
Google characteristics of a business owner.
They have no idea. And that is so crazy to me, because I feel I have good self-esteem because I understand who I am. I know what I stand for, what my values are, what my characteristics are, but I also know my shortcomings, and I'm totally fine with that. But a lot of people, they don't even know who they are, what their characteristics are, what their values are, but they know all the things that they're lacking. So that's where the discrepancy comes from. It's like, I do everything wrong, but I don't know what is good about me.
Yeah.
And if you sit someone down and let them write it out and ask other people, what do you value about me? Oh, I value honesty, your integrity. All of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm so much more than just a thing that I do. So I'm not just a powerlifter. Because it's cool to do powerlifting, but if that's the only thing you leave as your legacy, it's kind of weird.
Ask someone either, what's the virtue that makes you who you are? Then it's almost impossible for them to answer because people don't think about it. Or if you ask them, what's something about yourself that you know is holding you back? And you can see that the instant that they have the answer immediately in their head, they know for damn sure that they're lazy or they have bad self-esteem. But to be able to phrase that in a way that doesn't break themselves down is almost impossible. If you ask someone like, what do you fucking dislike about yourself? Just answering the question to them, it feels like it's giving in. It's allowing themselves to accept that, well, I guess that's what I am since I've said it now. And people just have a really hard time reflecting on themselves and without being their own worst critic.
Yes,
Like
yes.
you should be able to say, I fucking dislike that I do this, and then leave it for what it is.
Yeah, it's also the other side of the medallion is like some people, they're so introspective, it hurts.
Yeah.
It's they're constantly thinking, what does it say about me? Like if I have an interaction with someone and I come across as annoyed, but I'm actually tired, but they don't know I'm tired. They think to themselves, what did I do that I annoyed them?
Yeah.
What is it about me that, so they take everything
That
so
thing
personal.
I told him last month, I knew he was bothered by it.
Yeah, exactly. They take it so personal.
Yeah.
But I think it also comes from somewhere. And oftentimes when I have clients that I talk to and we do the more deeper work, the more confronting work, and we pinpoint the one moment that really, really messed them up, that's when like the waterworks come
Yeah.
on. And even the toughest guy breaks down in tears, and you see them soften up, and immediately they notice, oh, that's the thing I should be working on. It's the relationship to, or like the attachment to that memory. That is something that I can work on, rather than forever and ever pushing it down, judging myself for this.
Putting up a facade
Yeah.
and putting on a spectacle for the outside world.
I mean, how many people do you know that seem super, super confident and they're so insecure?
Literally every wannabe influencer who comes to gym. All these motherfuckers who are, sorry, you know exactly who you are. If you're on social media and you have a big following and
Yeah,
The-
I see this way too
yeah,
often.
the beauty of Iron House is that I get to see people on social media and in real life when they come to the gym. If you have the biggest personality on social media and you're everyone's friend and you're super out there, and when you come to the Bali, you can't even say hello normally. You can barely make a conversation. Like, hey, I follow you on Instagram. You know, what's this? Like, fucking like shit. Someone's talking to me in real life. You know,
or they're finally going to a gym where other people are interested in lifting weights and they just talk to nobody.
exactly. Yeah, it's a very funny but common personality trait nowadays to have two faces: the one you want people to see, and the one that you're trying to hide from people.
Yeah, also, you can see that some people, they want to be a certain way, but they feel like they cannot be that way.
Yeah.
They're pulled in by either constraints of their environment, the people that they grew up with. That's why it's so amazing to move cities or countries, because you can reinvent yourself.
Yeah. No one
Nobody
knows
knows you.
you. Yeah.
Exactly. You can just be whoever you want to be. And some people think the person I am now, that is set in stone. I cannot do anything about it. And I shouldn't do anything about it, because then I would fake it.
Yeah,
But-
imposter syndrome kicks in like a motherfucker.
But everything we do is sort of fake on some level anyway. Like nobody's 100% authentic, because we're shaped by our experiences, by our parents, peers, everything that we do. We're so shaped by everything. So how can we even be authentic? So in that point, I'm like, the only authentic thing you can do is look at who do you want to become, line that out, what that means for you, what characteristics and values does the person hold. So it's like something set in stone, not something that is like wavering all the time, and try to take steps into the right direction to become that person. Reinvent yourself. It's possible to do that. And I think that's what you're saying is people make up this picture online where they say, this is the person I actually want to be, because it gives me admiration. It gives me attention from other people. But this is the person that I am right now. And there's such a
what you
difference.
don't want people to see.
Exactly.
But even then, that image of what I want to be, it's almost always misguided. Oh, I want to be the way I am on social media because this guy gets attention, gets admiration. But then you're overvaluing attention and admiration
Yeah.
from strangers, and you're undervaluing what's actually going to make you happy at the end of the day. How many people are going to be fucking having an identity crisis if the internet stopped working?
Yeah.
How many people will just fucking shut down, become depressed, and have a mental breakdown because they can no longer reaffirm themselves with likes and dopamine hits on social media? I think it's a dangerous slope to be on for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And I think it pays a lot to, as you said, to really reflect on who are you really and what do you want to become, and find the means to get there. And with that, I think performance psychology, and I guess even closely linked the sports psychology, you can find yourself, your true self, in the thing you're passionate about, in the thing you're trying to achieve greatness in. Your sport and the thing you spend your free time on should be a reflection of what makes you happy on the inside, and not the pressure of what you should be. Just because everyone's powerlifting doesn't mean you have to powerlift.
Yeah.
if it's worth doing, it's also worth, like you said in the beginning, doing right, but also worth enjoying. In that sense, it's will be a shame if you love powerlifting but you fucking hate powerlifting. You know.
Yeah.
In that sense.
I mean, there's some people who love training, but they hate competing, but they push themselves to compete because they're like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
I'm not a real powerlifter unless I compete.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that it's not true. You can be a real powerlifter without competing. It's totally fine. Like, who made up that rule that you cannot be?
There's all these weird ass rules nowadays that like all this gatekeeping going on.
Yeah, it's so much gatekeeping, but it's so much elitism as well. Like I see that in the fitness industry a lot. Like the gatekeeping, the elitism. Oh, you're not a real athlete because of this and that.
Nowadays, it looks like you're not a real female powerlifter unless you buy Gymshark and you wear those white Nike blazers with white socks. If you don't have those things, then you're like, according to Instagram, you're not allowed to declare yourself as anything besides a fit girl.
I've heard you say that before, but I haven't noticed it. But next competition, I'm gonna pay attention to it.
Man, go on social media. Like, hey, rock whatever you want to rock. If that's what you feel happy in, do you. I'm just saying, it's very suspicious that almost every female powerlifter now, especially in Holland, they all have Gymshark, white Nike blazers, and white socks popping up over it. Everyone has, like, it's just suspicious. But even as a case, what the fuck you want to do? I ain't judging. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying some things is what it is.
To be fair, I have heard those leggings are pretty comfy. So,
well, maybe we should all give them a try. Maybe we're all going to end up wearing a Nike blazers and leggings in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Hey.
Gymshark and Nike should sponsor this podcast.
Probably.
Yeah.
Hey, if they made leggings for dudes, I'd wear them.
You probably would. Like, I see you rocking.
I want more companies making leggings for men.
Yeah. Well, let's hope they pick up on this podcast. Patrick, thanks so much for coming.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I'm not even surprised. I told him before we started, like, we want to keep it about half an hour. But even as I told him that, saying, like, I'm going to say that so that I've said it to be professional. But I know for damn sure we were going to go longer than that. So it's just a very interesting topic. And you have such a broad knowledge base of it. So thanks for sharing what you could share. And we're happy that you're able to stop by when you're in your short trip back to Dutchland. And who knows, maybe next time you're here, you can pop in for another episode. Teach us more about what we need to practice, feel, and think in order to get more out of ourselves. Yeah.
No, I definitely would love to. I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I do for work.
I know you do.
Yeah. Like, you kind of have to, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
It's completely, it's so valuable information, and it's so important to know. And like you said, it doesn't just help you in your sports; it helps you in your whole life. I think a lot of people are struggling with things that they don't have to struggle with if they just learn to get the right perspective, if you just learn to quiet the mind and be true to what you value. I think it can help a lot of people out.
Yeah, for sure.
So keep up the good work.
And if you guys want to check me out.
Oh, yeah. Plug your shit.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Camera right there. Plug it. Tell them where to find you. Tell them where to look.
Is that my camera?
Yeah, that's your camera over there.
It's only one. On Instagram at @true_Patrick.
I'll put a little thingy.
Cool. You can also reach out to me via email, patrickprojectikigai@gmail.com. And if you want to have one-on-one coaching, whether that is as an athlete or for your self-esteem, self-image, anything that we covered right now, reach out to me. I have some spots free occasionally, so make sure to save that.
Jump on that shit.
Exactly. And
I can totally vouch for Patrick. This course, super interesting.
5 out of 5.
Worth the money. Go for it, man.
Exactly. The sports psychology group course, also great investment for every coach that is aspiring to be the best coach ever. Wants to join the ranks of someone like Roy, for instance. Definitely encourage that. So we can learn more, we can share more, can make everybody better. At the end of the day, that's the purpose of what I do, make everybody better. And we can all learn and raise the bar for everyone so that the bad fitness influencers don't get a space anymore.
Well, at least they'll have a good fight because them motherfuckers they work hard for their followers. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for listening. Remember to like and subscribe. If you want to see the video version of this podcast, available on YouTube. If you're just listening, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast. Give it a like, give it a follow, and send us some feedback. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you're thinking as you're listening to this. What touches the soul, and let's talk about that. Peace in the East.
See ya.
Doei.
Bye.